Unconventional money rules that millionaires use? What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host, Brett Dupree, here to increase your vibration? I don't know what I was trying to say. Today I have a wonderful interview with Joel Salomon. However, before that, this is the part of my podcast where I am vulnerable about what's going on in my life. Because if I cannot be vulnerable, how can I ask my guests to be vulnerable as well? Notice I said guests instead of interviewees. Isn't that cool? Well, one thing I like to say is for the last week has been interesting. Still going through that existential crisis, if you will. I understand now why people buy expensive cars and then trade in their wives for younger girlfriends and anything they can do to not think about the fact that they're going to die someday, because it's a terrifying thought. I wish I had the faith of some people that there is an afterlife, or what it is. I mean, it would suck if it's Sumerian afterlife, where my spirit goes to this realm where all I do is sit around in this gray, boring area eating dust all day. So I certainly hope it's not the Sumerian afterlife, and I'm not liking the idea of no afterlife either, because, sheesh, what's the point of this, really, if you think about it? But anyway, I'm not going to be talking about what happens after death, because honestly, who likes hearing people talk about that unless this was Welcome to What Happens After Death podcast? Wouldn't that be a fun podcast, just having a bunch of people on talking about what they think happens after death? Anyway, this last week has been interesting. I've been doing a Toastmaster, again, I'm part of Toastmasters, and level 3 of Motivational Strategies, which is the new Pathways, has this interesting project where you are supposed to journal on your emotions for 2 weeks and then give a speech about that. And I've been thinking about my emotions for the past 2 weeks. And one of the things that it tells you to do as a leader is when you are triggered. Remember, a trigger is just something that happens in your past and that was emotional, and you start feeling that emotion again. To relax, detach, breathe, focus. And the problem I had was with the word detach. Mostly because that is my coping strategy, and honestly, I'm a detach addict. So the thought of detaching during an argument or during a time where I'm upset as a leader does not sit well with me, mostly because it just, honestly, when I think about my life, any time where I don't do something that I want to do, I am detaching. I'm doing something so I don't feel that emotion. When I try to overeat, I detach from my hunger so that I can eat more food. Anytime I want to go into a conversation, anytime I'm worried that if I'm in a relationship, I'm not having this problem now, but in the relationship in the past, where I start getting worried, I would detach from the relationship. And any woman knows they don't like it when your man detaches. I mean, I don't think men like that either, but detach emotionally. And that just causes it to spiral and end. That's one reason why I haven't had a relationship for a year, because, that's just my... right now, I'm closing at 11 months, which is super awesome with my current relationship, hooray. But I'm just saying, in the past, I would detach and close down emotionally. And even thinking about this existential crisis that I'm going in, if you could feel that fear into the bones, I would detach, and then the detachment means I would make a decision such as watch Netflix all day instead of doing something constructive like work on my website or convert all my podcasts into Buzzsprout, which is how I am now on a different platform. I think it's just good to get my podcast off of my other platform and to make sure I have good statistics for sure. But anyway, the idea is when I detached, because I was freaking myself out by imagining what life is without me, I spent $86 on this video game called Stellaris and then played it all weekend. But, in the positive side, I did figure out Stellaris. It's a very complicated game, and it's really fun. So that's a positive of this existential crisis, being able to have more fun with a video game. I mean, who doesn't like that? But I can understand why they want to detach, why that's a good idea. Mostly because when you are overly emotional, that's when you make some of your worst decisions. That's when you could yell something like, I hate you, to a loved one. That's when you can go to the bottle and drink a lot of booze. That's when you can throw something, or that's when you can actually attack and get physically violent. Your fight or flight kicks in when you're triggered and you focus. You're hyper focused and angry and or sad or whatever, and you just want that feeling to stop, or you just want to deal with it. And a lot of times you can make bad decisions or come off as a dummy, as there are plenty of videos of people asking people questions on the street. And the entire point of those videos is, first, people are nervous because they're getting videotaped, and then they get nervous just talking to strangers in that situation. Then the person asks an emotionally charged question, or stupid pet tricks by Jay Leno. Oh my God, I want to be on Jay Leno, blah, 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 blah. I don't even know my name. So they won't know the three branches of the government, because why would they? They're about to be on the Jay Leno show in front of 5 million people. Heck, when I was in college, I forgot the name of Papa Smurf because I was doing this fake Family Feud game, and I said Father Smurf or something like that. I just couldn't think of Papa Smurf, and that just left my brain. I know Papa Smurf. I watched a heck of a lot of Smurfs, but if I was one of those stupid pet human things, or being owned by, or one of those videos being owned by owning the libs, or how dumb Trump supporters are, all those videos are the same, edited, and then utilizing the fact that the people are getting emotional and using their emotions against them. So that made me think to myself, what should we do? I like relaxing. Just taking a moment I gotta relax. And I like breathing. Breathing is one of the most important things to do. In fact, 3 deep breaths, especially if your inhale is shorter than your exhale, that will actually hack your autonomic nervous system and relax you. And I like the focus and centering and focusing. But the detaching I don't like, because I don't think that helps you. And then I think that also takes away connection from the argument. It's almost like the person goes into robot mode, and every time I'm in a conversation and I feel emotional and they don't, I don't believe anything they're saying. You're not emotional, or you shut down your emotions, then you're just you're debating to win an argument, and I don't trust you. And when you're emotional with somebody, we read emotions. We're emotional beings. So detaching, I don't think, is number one. I think it's mostly being heart-centered and finding a way to engage your heart, engage your love, engage the part where you want the best situation out of it, and still utilize that emotion because it's important, and not going too far, because I know Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Amma, the Hugging Saint, they're known for being abusive people. They just let their emotions... Heck, Amma is known for throwing chairs at some of her followers when she is upset. And it's known as, Kali love. But in my humble opinion, it's known as not utilizing your emotions in a positive state. If you cannot keep your hands off another person, then you're not utilizing your emotions. So I think it's about breathing. And I like what I learned from Andy Dooley, which is the Navy SEALs they still feel fear because they're in that dangerous situation, but they do a 4-second breath technique where they breathe in 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds, breathe out 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds. And that allows them to utilize that fear for the heightened awareness, but also the hyper focus, but also keep calm enough so they get the hyper awareness and the decision making of the frontal lobe, so that you can use the best of both worlds. Or at least that's what I think about that. So that's been my week, is thinking about. I gave my speech Tuesday. This is Thursday. I'm a podcast late. That's life. Anyway, speaking of podcast late, let's actually talk about our guests. My guest. Joel is a prosperity coach. He works closely with his clients to help identify and overcome the roadblocks standing in their way of personal financial freedom. He is the author of 2 books, Mindful Money Management, Memoirs of a Hedge Fund Manager, which immediately became a bestseller. And his new book, which he is promoting today, is the 9 Money Rules Millionaires Use. He leads multiple workshops on teaching how to overcome limiting beliefs. And he's also a certified infinite possibilities trainer, just like me, an advanced communicator gold Toastmaster, just like me. And now, here's my interview with Joel Salomon. Hello, Joel, and welcome to my podcast.
Brett, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Real excited.
I'm excited to have you on. It seems like you are a best-selling author. How fun is that?
It is awesome. I am so grateful to be able to share my message with the world.
It says here that you led nine podcasts, 9 workshops about overcoming your limiting beliefs. When you first got started in life, what were your limiting beliefs?
That's a great question, Brett. So before I dive into that, I'd love to talk a little bit about who I am, because I am a very proud dad of 2 daughters, Lauren and Morgan, and they are now 15 and 13. The name of my company, Sol Lore More, is named after them. So I'd like to talk a little bit about them because they taught me about unconditional love, and I dedicated Mindful Money Management, Memoirs of Hedge Fund Manager, my first book, to them. But limiting beliefs, I talk a lot about limiting beliefs in my upcoming book, The 9 Money Rules That Millionaires Use, only the unconventional ones. And the first number 1 rule is beliefs and having faith in your dreams and desires. So I had a ton of limiting beliefs because of a lot of experience that I had growing up. And one of them was I could not speak in front of more than 2 people without having my index cards in front of me. My biggest fear in life was public speaking. So that was a big limiting belief. I had another big limiting belief that people were evil. And we can go into that as well. That is, I talk a lot about that in chapter 2 of my book, how to overcome, choose faith over fear. So one of my big limiting beliefs was most people in the world are evil. And I know now that most people in the world are good souls and out to support and help you.
What was the underlying belief that caused you to believe that most people in this world are evil?
Great question. 2 things happened growing up. One was on July 4th, 1976, when my parents and I came back from a 4th of July party in the evening of July 4th, and the front door was open and our house had been ransacked, and the TVs were gone, the jewelry was gone. And it was a very traumatic experience for a young child to go through. And then just a few years later, I was a latchkey kid. I used to come home for lunch when I was in high school if I had enough time. And one day I came home when I was 16 years old. And again, the front door was open, ajar a bit. And I walked in to see 2 robbers fleeing our house and unwittingly chased after them, having some courage, I guess, at the time. But those 2 instances, along with one other, which I can describe as well, I guess I was 12 or 13. I had accidentally tripped one of the neighborhood's best friends. And my best friend the next day called me out of the house, said, we're going to play some baseball in the neighborhood on the street. And as I was walking down the street, I was jumped by this guy who I had tripped in school and who was probably double my size. I was very small for my age. And I took a pretty big whipping before my mom heard my screams, and the blood was dripping down my nose and so on. So those few instances made me have that very negative belief about others.
How was your limiting beliefs holding you back in trying to accomplish your dreams?
Well, I lived my life in fear, and the first one, in terms of public speaking, I was very shy. I had a very, very difficult time. Whenever I was called on, I'd freeze, or if I didn't have my notes in front of me, I'd have a very hard time speaking to a group. I have a story that I tell when I speak now about how in 2000 I was living and working in Switzerland, and my boss came to me in January of 2000 and she said to me, Joel, you had a good year in 1999. You accomplished a lot for us. I want you to come with me and the rest of the managing directors to Schruns, Austria, and give a speech in front of the 400 managing directors and the president of the division as a reward. I said to myself, a reward? Are you kidding me? This is the least thing I want to do. And so I got prepared. I got out my PowerPoint and I did a very good PowerPoint presentation, and I wrote down every single word I was going to say. And on January 20th of 2000, I went with my boss and people from around the globe from my company I was working at, Swiss Re, stood up in that auditorium in front of 400 people, and I read every single word I had to say on every single slide. And I remember looking up about 15 minutes into that presentation and seeing the president of the division and one of the senior managing directors in the second row, both of them with their heads down, sleeping.
That's a nightmare.
And I went right back to reading my words. So that's one story of how that fear really impacted my professional life. And the fear of others that came from those robberies and that ambush when I was a young child made it very difficult for me to have friends. And I went through a large part of my life having just one or two friends from childhood, and had a very big difficulty making friends with others because of that assumption that they were going to do something evil to me.
So what was the catalyst that made you make the decision to change this?
There are a few things. One is I came in contact with a lot of people who were kind and nice, and started thinking that there are kind and nice people out there that helping me, supporting me on my journey. And things started happening. I realized that when I started thinking positive thoughts, started thinking about people being nicer to me, that they were indeed nicer to me. And if I put out a dream or desire of having more friends, that more and more people showed up in my life that were friendly. And the other thing that happened with regards to public speaking was I went to a conference called Playing the Matrix by Mike Dooley. And at that conference, he talked about his background as an accountant. And I started my career as an actuary. And Brett, I don't know if you know the difference between an accountant and an actuary, but I tell people an actuary looks at his feet when he talks to you. An accountant looks at your feet when they talk to you. And they say an accountant is an actuary with charisma. So there's not much difference between the two of us. And Mike talked about his story and how he was an accountant and he decided that he was going to become a motivational speaker, and he needed to improve so that he could actually look up and not look out the floor when he was talking with other people. And he joined Toastmasters. And so I joined Toastmasters right after I went to Playing the Matrix in October 2016. And Toastmasters has helped me dramatically to gain the self-confidence to be able to speak in front of large crowds, to be able to speak without my note cards. And I even gave a speech in March of 2018 at Mike Dooley's Infinite Possibilities Train the Trainer, where I talk about how I'm now able to speak without writing every single word down and not having my note cards with me for every single speech or presentation or podcast that I give.
One thing that stuck out to me that you said was, I was reading this book called Captivate, the Science of Success by Vanessa Van Edwards. And she mentioned the fact that the thing that differentiates popular people with non-popular people is just popular people are better at recognizing popular people and thus working on becoming friends with them. And the idea of being more friendly to get more friends just kind of coincides with that. It's funny how that works, is you want more friends, and the best way to do that is to be friendly.
Exactly. From my perspective, it's what many people have termed the law of attraction. So you're putting out what you want. So you want to feel happy. if you put out happiness, you're going to get more and more things in your life to be happy about. If you're feeling grateful all day, every day for the things that you have now or the things that are coming in your life, there's more and more things that come into your life that you will appreciate.
One thing that I'm curious about is what got you to going to play The Matrix by Mike Dooley. A lot of people live their life and have bad things, but they don't really do anything about it, and they just turn around and complain to their friends. What got you to actually want to do something?
That's another great question, Brett. If you had asked me 25 years ago, what's your dream? What would you want to do if you could do anything? I would have said, be a hedge fund manager. And I got a lot of people who doubted me. I eventually got there. It took a very long time. It took me probably 15 years from the idea, the thought, to the actual fruition of that thought. And I actually started my own hedge fund in 2012, and we were doing well. Performance was very good, but we weren't of scale. And I went to a conference in 2012 that really changed my life and made me decide to shut down my hedge fund. And in 2016, I shut down my hedge fund and decided to become a prosperity coach. I called up this woman who was a health coach to ask her how she was marketing, how she was getting clients, picking her brain, as it were. And during that conversation becomes a life-changing event in its own right, because she says to me, Joel, are you going to play in The Matrix in October? And I said, what's that? And she said, Joel, you don't know Mike Dooley? You don't get the note from the universe? And I said, no, I'm really sorry, I don't. So she explained to me all about Mike. It was at the time in my life where I was in transition. I was open to new ideas. I wanted to make prosperity coaching a much bigger business than my hedge fund was. And so I was open to the idea of going. She went and she coaxed me to go, and the rest is history.
That's really cool. Your desire to be a coach, is it the way you wanted to serve people, or what got that ball rolling?
Right. So I'm at this conference, and two things happened that changed my life. One was that they had this guest speaker, and he's speaking about stock options and stocks. But when he talked about stock options in particular, it was like it was a get-rich-quick scheme. You don't need much time. You don't need much money. This is how the rich people get rich, and options are essentially riskless. And I was sick to my stomach. So first of all, the guy was being, at the very least, misleading. And at the worst, he was lying to these people. I had people tap me on the shoulder, whisper in my ear, Joel, this makes sense. They knew I was a hedge fund manager. After he was done, we went outside. And I said, please don't do this. He has no idea about your assets or earnings or cash flow. But most importantly, he has no idea about your education about stock options or your beliefs around stock options. And so I went home that night and I mulled over the fact that if I could ever get up the courage to talk in front of 200 people, I could be more authentic and tell the truth to these people and help them as opposed to swindle them. And so that I literally went into my office. I couldn't sleep that night. This thought kept on going over my head. How can I help these people? I'm not helping these people. I'm helping a few institutions manage money, but I'm not helping the masses. So I literally went into my office on 54th and 6th Avenue, Manhattan, and I sent an email to my investors telling them I'm shutting down the fund. I'm giving them their money back because I figured out my true purpose. And yeah, I know it may sound like a cliche, but it's true. And I realized that being of service to others is really my true purpose. And I wasn't really being true to myself, my soul, my spirit by doing what I was doing. And in fact, when I wrote my book, Mindful Money Management, it came out last year. Chapter 1 is called Being of Service to Others.
There's just something special about being of service to others. It's very fulfilling.
It certainly is. I feel every day when I'm coaching people one-on-one or if I'm doing a webinar and I see improvement, I see the light bulb go off, I see improvement in their lives. It's just a special feeling when you're helping others. I feel like I've gained a lot of wisdom over my life, and I want to share that with as many people as possible. There's so many people in this world that are not financially free, that are struggling with money. And I want to teach them what I know so that they can thrive in this lifetime and not just survive. And there's easy ways to do that. That's part of the reason why I wrote this book, The 9 Money Rules Millionaires Use, so that everyone can have the lessons. And it's called the Unconventional Rules because there's a lot of rules in there, like we talked about beliefs already, but there are a lot of rules in there that you can apply in everyday life that will create more joy, happiness, abundance, and bliss, as well as prosperity in your life.
So when you first started your coaching, switching from hedge fund manager to coach, did you have any limiting beliefs that you needed to overcome to have a successful coaching business?
Absolutely. The biggest one, I think, is the one I had as a hedge fund manager, which was I'm the product and I am not a great marketer. And how do I raise money for my hedge fund when I don't have anyone to help me? And so that was a big limiting belief. I did obviously raise some money, but if we had raised a lot more, maybe I wouldn't have had the epiphany and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I wouldn't have gotten to a point in my life that is my true purpose. And so maybe that limiting belief served me to get here. And so now I know I actually work on affirmations. I've been doing that for a few years now, that being of service to others is my true purpose. And if I come from a point of view of helping, it's not selling, it's not marketing. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm helping others. And from that point of view, I don't feel like I need to be the best marketer in the world. I just need to serve my true purpose.
So one thing that also stood out to me is when you started thinking about this, you reached out to a health coach, and see how she was able to do the same. So what is the benefit of asking for help?
I think it's important to know your best skill sets and to ask others where it's not your best skill sets, to learn from others. And I appreciate when others ask me for help, and I've come full circle. I used to, when I first started driving, get lost all the time because I would never ask anybody for directions. Obviously, this was before we had Google Maps on our phone. For me, I know when I am looking to improve myself in a certain way, there's plenty of ways to get help from others. And so asking and gaining knowledge, I think, is just, for me at least, the way I live my life. I want to learn and grow every day. And so I do that by asking for help from others, by talking to other people. I'm learning on this podcast from you, Brett. So I'm learning every day, and that makes me feel good. I think it's important to know where your strengths are and where your improvement opportunities are, and then go to the areas to other people so that you can improve.
So how do you teach people to overcome their limiting beliefs?
That's another great question, Brett. So it's practice, it's discipline. The first step is to understand where you have limiting beliefs. And I ask my clients to write down from 1 to 10. I'm a math guy. I'm an analytical guy, as you could imagine, being an actuary and credit analyst and equity analyst and portfolio manager. So I ask my clients to write down their level of belief in each investment idea from 1 to 10, where 1 is massive doubt. I could lose all my money in this investment. And 10 is absolute faith. I know I'm going to make money in this investment. We go through the limiting beliefs on their investments, and we can do that with everything. So people that I interact with generally have learned subconsciously about money growing up, and there are limiting beliefs about money. One of the ones that I grew up with is you need to work hard to be rich and successful, and which is one that I think most people I've interacted on Wall Street believe, and I believe it's a limiting belief. And when I made very large sums of money in 2009 and 10, I worked many less hours. I was having fun. I was grateful. I was appreciative. And I believe those attributes are so much more important than working hard. Another limiting belief maybe you can't be rich and spiritual. I know a lot of very spiritual people through my interactions with Mike Dooley and Infinite Possibilities as a certified Infinite Possibilities trainer. And a lot of people have this limiting belief that you can't be rich if you're spiritual. Others have said rich people are criminals. Well, that's a massive limiting belief. So if you believe rich people are criminals and you have a good soul, you're going to have an internal conflict. You're unable to become rich yourself if you believe that all rich people are criminals. There's a whole survey that I ask people to fill out before they start working with me that goes over a lot of these money beliefs that they may have. And look, some people come in with great, very strong beliefs that are empowering beliefs. They may be already very close to financial freedom. But there's a lot of people out there that are far away, and it's, I believe, mostly due to limiting beliefs.
That is true. When you get your mindset correct, you can really move forward in your life. And those limiting beliefs are the things that can hold us back from that.
I think not only can, but will. I think limiting beliefs stop us from living the lives of our dreams. So that's an important place to start. Beliefs are just thoughts that you've told yourself over and over again. And then it becomes, to some people, it becomes truth. Right? They don't even think it's a belief. They just think that's the truth. Rich people are criminals. That's the truth. And yet, there are many rich people I've met that are giving hundreds of millions of dollars away to cure cancer or heart disease or stop poverty in different places, to feed the poor, make sure they have food on their plate every single meal. There's many very gracious, giving, rich people. And it's important to know that a lot of what people think are not truths, but just beliefs. They may be limiting, they may be empowering, but they're just beliefs.
So you have a new book coming out, The 9 Money Rules Millionaires Use. Can you give us a little preview of your book?
Great. Thanks, Brett. I appreciate the question. Yes. So this is the book that I had a lot of fear about writing when I shut down my hedge fund. So it's taken a couple of years. And I really open up the kimono, as it were. I tell a lot of stories about my life, which we've already gone into, a few of those already, the fears that I had. So, and we talk, rule number 1 is when you believe. So we've already talked about beliefs, to write down your beliefs. Rule number 2 is, can my intuition make me money? Intuition, when you listen to your higher self, you can make a lot more money. And I know as a hedge fund manager, if I didn't listen to my intuition, I either lost money or I made less money. And I go through in that chapter ways to exercise your intuition every chance you get so that you can improve it and use it not only in your daily life, but also in your financial life. Another unusual, unconventional rule is happiness. And I talk a little bit about this in Mindful Money Management. It's chapter 8 is called Happiness, but this is really where in this book I talk about why it needs to be a rule for you to be financially free. And I gave a big example in this book about how my performance changed dramatically when I started feeling happier. It was, the light bulb went off. It took a while, but the light bulb went off in 2015 when I saw the correlation within weeks of changing my feeling. And happiness is probably the highest emotion, the highest vibration. And imagine if you could feel happy 24/7, then you are probably living the life of your dreams, right? Nothing's bothering you. You're just in a state of happiness all the time. I go into, in that chapter, my happy habits, but I recommend that listeners write down what makes them happy. Now, for me, it's going for a jog or working out or being with my kids, exercising or playing ping pong, dancing, those kinds of things, listening to uplifting songs. I love to listen to music, travel. Write down what makes you happy and be conscious in the way you create your own happiness, that you have something to go to when something happens that doesn't make you so happy. You can do one of your happy habits and be prepared. So those are some of the rules. One rule I did want to mention, which is very controversial is DIY. And I truly believe that everyone can do it themselves. All you need is to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And I actually have been teaching a nonprofit group, the Boys and Girls Club of Stamford, Connecticut, all the rules in my book, especially this rule, and I teach them how to invest in different asset classes, be it stocks or real estate or bonds. And these kids are 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, and they are not the best math students, but they know how to do those 4 calculations. That's all you need. This book is a bit controversial in that I truly believe everyone can do it themselves. The financial institutions have taught you what I believe is not a truth. It's a limiting belief that you can't do it yourselves. And I believe we truly can. So I'll leave it there. There's plenty of there's 9 rules, obviously, but that's a quick snippet, a little tease on some of the key rules in the book.
So with all your coaching and webinars and seminars, do you have any fun success stories you'd like to share?
I do. Thank you for asking. I have a few. I'll just pick this latest one, which is top of mind. I worked with this actuary who read my book, Mindful Money Management, last year, and he knew me as a hedge fund manager, and he didn't know I had become a prosperity coach. And he read my book, and the last chapter is called Prosperity Coaching and exactly what I'm doing. And he said, I want to do what you did. I want the career transition from actuary to hedge fund manager. And I said, okay, this is great because this is unusual. I teach people how to become financially free. I teach people how to change their money mindset. I teach people about investing, but this was a specific task. Get him from where he was, which he had pretty significant limiting beliefs on, that he could become a hedge fund manager like I did. And of course, it took me 15 years, but I didn't have a coach guiding me and helping me along the way. And anyway, long story short, he was living and working in Paris, and he is now working for a major investment bank. I'd say he's one step away from being a hedge fund manager, and it's taken him less than 18 months. So I think in another 2 or 3 years, he'll be where I was. That took me 15 years. I've shortened the time by teaching him the steps that I took. And I believe in 3 or 4 years, he'll be there instead of 15. So that's, for me, a pretty big success story. So he's pretty close to financial freedom. He's probably just a few years away. And I've helped people manifest money. I had a client who was very poverty conscious. She believed that she was running out of money. She was already retired and spending more than she had coming in. And I showed her how her cash flow was negative 1 year because of a couple of one-time expenses. We worked on her mindset, and she manifested over $20,000 of found money that she had totally forgotten about, that she had lent somebody money over 10 years ago, totally forgotten about it, had written it off. And as we worked on her mindset, and our lucrative opportunities always come my way, and money comes easily and frequently, these are some of the affirmations I give my clients. This found over $20,000 came into her physical reality, which was just awesome.
That is really cool. So we are coming to the end of our time together, and one thing that I like to ask my interviewees is for a 1 minute of motivation. You can imagine this as if you have a time machine and you travel back to your 8-year-old self and you want to convey the information your 8-year-old self needs to succeed, but unfortunately you only have a minute before you're popped back to your current time. Or you can think about it as condensing your entire life's purpose into a minute. So are you ready?
I am.
Let's go.
So my biggest problem throughout my life, from childhood and moving forward, have been doubt. I doubted myself. I didn't believe that I could do the things that I have achieved. So if I was back 8 years old, I would tell that boy to doubt the doubt. Why is the doubt right? Have faith in your dreams and desires. Because when you believe and have faith in what you want to happen, it will happen. But if you doubt what's going to happen, and you question and you listen to others who may doubt you, because a lot of times your close family members doubt you. It actually doesn't occur. So doubt the doubt. Hashtag doubt the doubt. Have faith in your dreams and desires, and they will come true.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. I really enjoyed your story on how you started your life living through fear and how fear held you back from going to your desire and having that, in most people's opinion, nightmare scenario of talking to a group of people and seeing your higher ups falling asleep and being able to use that and push through your fears and thus starting to live your life's purpose, which is serving others and helping other people live their lives, especially around money, because money is such a charging aspect of our modern day life. And so you helping people with their belief in money, I find very commendable. So thank you so much for being on my podcast, and thank you so much for your service to this, making this world a better place.
Thanks so much, Brett. It's been a real pleasure, and I appreciate all your questions. Very insightful. Great interview. Thanks so much.
May your day be special.
Thank you.
And there you have it, folks. That was my interview with Joel Salomon. What an interesting guy. It's fun listening to somebody with similar background in me in the fear of public speaking until we took Toastmasters. I know I had a huge fear. So if you're looking for a second testimonial that Toastmasters works after mine, here's another one. He's also Advanced Communicator Gold, and I plan by the 25th to have my Distinguished Toastmaster. I forgot to ask him if he was going for his Distinguished Toastmaster, or maybe I did ask and I don't remember. Memory. That's a thing. I enjoy the vulnerability Joel displayed in today's interview. He did a good job of talking about his background, his own fears that he used to overcome. One thing I truly believe is that when somebody goes through something, then that allows them to be able to help others go through that thing. So if you do have limiting beliefs, listening to Joel talk about his limiting beliefs, you know that this guy can help you with working through limiting beliefs, because he's not just one of those people who decided to jump into business and because everything was going great. He went through some things and very relatable. I also had fear of public speaking. Mine was due to very similar type events where there wasn't something so big that shocked me and put me in a hole. It's just a bunch of little things like losing my friends, feeling like I couldn't trust my parents in certain aspects, and just not feeling I could ever speak out, and developing a fear of public speaking gradually to the point where I could barely speak in high school or whatnot. The idea of getting in front of people used to be one of my worst fears. So it's nice listening to someone else who's overcome such a fear. And I also enjoy his Money Rules. This is a book that I'm going to have to check out because I also have struggles with money. And I know most of it is my mental state. I know one of mine is I always feel like I need to spend money when I feel bad. And I also have to work on the fact that when I was young, when I had money, a lot of times my dad would borrow it, so I had to spend it as fast as I can, because if I didn't spend it, I would never get to spend it. And by borrow, he'd borrow it and then say, I just bought you school clothes. I don't need to pay you back. And then I'm like, I wanted to buy something fun with that money, not pay for my own school clothes. Or at least tell me you're going to make me pay for my own school clothes. Don't spring that on me. Anyway, that was part of the things that led me to having a poor money mindset, which I've been working on for like years. So books like Joel's is extremely, extremely helpful in wanting to get your money right. So if you want to learn the secrets of millionaires, you can find him on his website, salomor.com, SALAURMOR.com. There'll be a link in the show notes. And there you can sign up for a free 30-minute introductory financial freedom session. And on Joel's website, you'll find tons of freebies, including powerful prosperity affirmations, self-talk audio files, his favorite books, uplifting songs, and travel destinations. You can order Mindful Money Management, Memoirs of a Hedge Fund Manager, and pre-order a signed copy of the 9 Money Rules Millionaires Use, only the unconventional ones. Joel's ultimate goal is to help at least 100,000 people become financially free, and he would love you to be one of them. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host, Brett Dupree. If you like this podcast, give it a like, subscribe, however you're listening to that. If you want to get in touch with me for any reason, send me an email. You can send me an email at BRE2Ts, DUPR2Es at joyousexpansion.com. You can also check me out at joyousexpansion.com, where you can get my free ebook as well as learn more about me and my services. You can also find more about this podcast at pod.joyousexpansion.com. Find me on Instagram at Joyous Expansion. Find me on Twitter at Joyous Expansion. Find me on Facebook at Increase Your Joy, because I made some mistakes early on in my SEO. Yes, once again, I am Brett Dupree, your Joyous Expansion life coach, champion of authentic joy, and catalyst of transformation for the Church of Awesome. Thanking you for coming to the end of my podcast and listening to me. I appreciate you for who you are. I love you for who you are, and I hope your day is special. And once again, I remind you to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. Now play that jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach. Good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue. I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Yeah.